Let's welcome in Elliotte Friedman, who's never truculent, and it's one of the things we like most about you. The Taylor Hall deal has sent shockwaves. One, because it was early, and two, because the return wasn't exactly a haul. Your reaction to the deal?
You know, I think there were a bunch of teams that were looking into this. I think Vegas was looking into it. I think St. Louis was looking into it. I think Boston obviously was looking into it. I think there were a few teams that were considering it. One of the reasons I think that this happened is that Boston was a team that was really trying to look at getting Taylor Hall in the offseason. They couldn't do it financially. They had to move other pieces around, and Hall just didn't want to wait. He wanted to sign. I think he's intrigued with the possibility of being a Boston Bruin long-term, depending on what happens here. This is a test drive for the Bruins. I think Hall saw real value in that. I think, you know, the Bruins and their core of players and the extremely professional nature of them, I think is something that appeals to him too. So I wasn't surprised at the end of the day that was the destination. I think we're all surprised at the price. You know, I think, you know, Hall, he knows he's got a lot to prove. I mean, he's got a lot of pride. You know, one thing I've learned about Taylor Hall, and I've dealt with him a lot over the years, he's got a lot of pride. He's going to see what everybody's saying and thinking about him today, and he's going to be determined to prove something.
Elliotte, Brian, good morning. How are you? I'm sure you're exhausted. You're doing great work. Keep it up. We enjoy it. Why do you think the price came in at where it did come in? We were just discussing it briefly. You may or may not have heard that conversation.
First of all, Lawton, the people who fall out of bed and look as good as you do, they disgust me. I just want you to know that, okay? Someone just texted me this morning. I was just doing a hit on the score. They look like, it said I look like a rolled up $2 bill, and you look fantastic. You know, I just have to say, you know what I think it was? I just think the demand wasn't there. I mean, Brian, you're a business guy. It's all supply and demand. You know, there was an unbelievable Twitter argument last night. I saw people talking about Nick Foligno, a first rounder, and Taylor Hall, a second rounder, and a player. And the fact is, there was demand for Foligno. People were going hard after him, and there just wasn't as much demand for Hall. And I think that's kind of the way it's gone. You know, the one thing I will say about Taylor Hall is there was a game a couple weeks ago where, you know, he took a shot in the face, New Jersey, Buffalo, and Buffalo, I think, had lost 12 in a row at that point in time. And, you know, I thought, he ain't coming back. He might not be back this year. And he was back the next period. I think he is going to be determined to prove that, you know, he's going to be determined to prove that he's better than the way people talk about him right now. But the fact is the demand wasn't there for him right now.
I've never heard of this site you speak of, Twitter. Any negativity or arguments on that site, I'll have to check that out. In the meantime, can you give us some players to watch, guys that have not been moved, but that you expect will be on the move today?
Well, the first one I would say, I don't know if I expect him to be on the move, but I think he's a guy teams have looked at and have talked to Arizona about, Connor Garland. And, you know, Garland's name has kind of been in conversations for the past couple of weeks. I think Arizona's tried to take some runs at signing him. He's an RFA with ARB rights for the next 2 seasons. You know, I think he's the kind of guy that I think intrigues teams, but I think Arizona knows if they're going to move him, it's got to be a high price. So, like, that's one name I'm definitely looking at today. Another is Alex Iafallo. The Kings and his representatives went late into the night to try to see if they could get a deal done. They didn't. I'm not convinced, though, that even if the Kings don't get a deal done, they're going to move him. I think there's some desire to see if they can work something out later as well, too. So that would be another guy I'd be looking at today. You know, I think that we're going to see some deals today. I don't know how big they're going to be, but I'm really curious to see where some of these players go, in particular some of the D like Kulikov and Alexiak. I think there's interest in them, and Kulikov was held out last night.
Elliotte, what's your feeling on, you know, we're talking about rentals. It's a lot about rentals. It's a lot about this playoff run. But let's talk about some hockey trades. Do you think we're going to see any? When I look at Calgary, Anaheim, St. Louis, Mini, Winnipeg, Vancouver, all rumored to at least be considering just straight-up hockey trades. Are you expecting any of that to actually go down today?
Oh, actually, you know what? I mentioned Hoffman. I should mention him. I forgot to mention him, Brian. I know you've been tweeting about him. I've been watching. I think Montreal's a team that's got interest in him. I think Anaheim's a very interesting one because I think they would like to do hockey deals. A team had recently told me they'd looked in on Josh Manson, a player who's got a lot of respect. First of all, the Ducks think really highly of him. And secondly, this team told me that the price was such that you could tell that the only way the Ducks are going to do it is if you really make it worth their while. So I think Anaheim's a very interesting team to watch because they got some players left with term. But like I was told, and same, like I was just told that if any of those guys get dealt, you're going to see the deal and you're going to say, okay, now I get why that guy got traded.
I always pay attention to your appearances on our shows intently. One time, you were not in Brad Pitt's dressing room, and you told us, which is, I assume, where you are right now with all those suits behind you, our best to Brad. You told us that you like to think that Lou Lamoriello thinks outside the box and tries to come up with ideas that no one else thinks of. And you said you put yourself in that mindset, and you said Dustin Brown. That was a couple weeks ago. Does that still resonate with you? Is that still an idea that you think has merit?
No, I don't think so. I think the Kings would prefer Dustin Brown stays there. I do think Lamoriello was in on Hall. I should say that. I forgot to mention them earlier. I do think he tried to get Taylor Hall too. And it's the second time this week I think he tried to get him. I think he chose to make the Palmieri deal instead of the Hall deal last Wednesday. But I still think he tried to get back into Hall this time. They just couldn't make it work. We've all said it. He thinks they can win, so he's going to try. And I'm not convinced Toronto's done yet either. I think if they see something they'll still be active.
Okay, Elliotte, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you one question about the hockey capital of the world since you're there right now, Toronto. How do you think they have done overall in this trade deadline thus far? Do you think they have a move left? And have you been impressed by their sophistication to rework their cap and fit players in? And you have to answer these in order. So this is a test, too.
Okay. So the first thing is, on their moves, look, Brian, they haven't given up anybody off their roster. They haven't given up who they consider their best prospects. They're going to have a thin next couple of drafts. There's no question about it. But sometimes, Brian, I think you have to try to win. You get seasons where you say, this is the year we have to go for it. And Toronto's in that spot. So I have no problem with what they're doing. Secondly, the second question you asked me was, do I think that they could do more? Yes, I do think they could do more. I've wondered about a guy like Jamie Alexiak. I'm not convinced Dallas is going to do it, but I think they'd be a team that would definitely have some interest in potentially doing an Alexiak if that kind of move is available to them. I think the other thing we're all kind of wondering here is what's the future of Frederik Andersen? The Maple Leafs are calling this insurance, saying getting David Rittich is insurance for both Campbell and Andersen who've been injured, but I think we're all kind of wondering exactly what this means.
What we know, Elliotte, is that you are always valuable to talk with, today especially. Thanks so much for your insights.
All right, guys, have a great day. Chat later.